What's going on YouTube? So we live in a time where you can increasingly pick what powertrains best complement your needs. And those needs extend all the way to the entire family when we're talking about a three-row family SUV. Now the Kia Telluride has been a very popular model since its introduction, but it's only available with just a V6. And that's where this EV9 comes in, bringing a new zero-emissions three-row SUV to the Kia lineup. So does this high-tech and luxurious EV crossover make sense compared to something more conventional like a Toyota Grand Highlander Hybrid Max? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Now to start off this review, I'm going to talk about the exterior, but before I get into that, I want to go ahead and mention that Mason wasn't able to come with me today. That's why I'm going to be doing things in kind of a first-person perspective. I'm here in beautiful California, nice sunny day to take a look at this EV9. Now, let's get into the exterior because I think this is one of the most distinct things about the EV9. It has a very daring look that's going to stand out against a lot of things on the market. So up in the front, you've got Kia's latest interpretation of the Opposites United grille. It's going to be a digital tiger nose, and what that means is that you're going to have a little bit of the conventional elements right up there at the top, but a lot of it is going to look very different from your typical Kia crossover, including the Telluride. You're also going to have lighting elements that are built into it, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. But in terms of your different trims, most of the models are going to have a kind of classic, mostly sealed off look. But this is the GT line, this is the top model. And on this one, you're going to add this kind of boxier lower finish here, which I think makes the vehicle look a lot more substantial. Regardless though, this is surprisingly aerodynamic despite its boxy shape at 0.28 coefficient of drag. And then in terms of ground clearance, I want to go ahead and mention you're going to have at least 7 inches, but if you choose an all-wheel drive model, you'll have 7.8 inches of ground clearance. But let's get into the overall lighting. So of course you're going to have standard premium LED headlights on all models. They have this very distinct look. I particularly love this daytime running light that runs through here and all the way over to the grille itself. But you will also have notice these little digital lights. These are integrated into the grille. If you choose one of the top trims, you're going to have this, and you can actually customize this with 5 different animations that appear when you approach the vehicle. It's pretty cool overall. Now, like I was mentioning earlier, there are several different trims, and depending on which one you choose will determine which wheel option you get. You begin with 19s. However, when you get up to this top GT line, this is going to get you 21-inch alloy wheels. All of the wheels, I have to say, have very unique designs to them. They've really done a great job of designing these aero covers to look super unique. This is my favorite look, and I think it matches well with the gloss black finish you're going to find going around the very squared off wheel arches. It is going to be a gloss black finish on the GT line, and then you're going to have a matte black finish on some of the lower end trim levels. Now walking up to our mirrors, you're going to find standard heating, standard blind spot monitoring, and standard power folding. That's very nice. If you choose the Land, you're also going to get auto dimming added in. And you'll notice we do have the black mirror housing here on the GT line. I do apologize that there's a little bit of mud up there, but we went through a really huge puddle on our way here today. Now, as I back up, you're gonna see this is a pretty substantial sized SUV. One of the things I think that this model does really well is hide just how large it really is. Even though to my eye it looks smaller than a Telluride, you're actually going to notice that this is longer than the Telluride by about an inch. It's 197.2 inches long. Now, if we're talking about conventional options like a Grand Highlander, this is going to be shorter than that, but this is still a substantial size SUV. Again, very boxy here on the side. We've got the gloss black finish that's going to go around the window surrounds as well as up on our raised roof rails. You have flush mount door handles. And as we pull back to the rear design, I do really like this perspective on the EV9. Again, it's tough and boxy, but also walks the line with being very futuristic as well. In terms of design elements back here, we do have the spoiler. We've got a hidden rear wiper, which is a nice touch. just like with the front, full LED lighting on all trim levels. It looks very nice. You have the gloss black finish down there on your lower areas. And as I kind of stoop down, this is a good point for me to talk about because a lot of EVs cannot really tow, but this one does have pretty impressive towing capabilities. If you choose the Land or the GT line models, you can go up to 5,000 pounds with the towing package. And it does have a self-leveling rear air suspension as well. So for those of you wondering, that is the same as what you can get in a Grand Highlander. Now, as I back up here, I do want to go ahead and talk about the safety systems. So you're going to have all of your safety systems as standard equipment, including forward emergency braking with pedestrian detection and even highway drive assist 2.0. You will be able to also get remote smart parking. That's going to be on the GT line and optional on the Land. But the real show about this model is on the inside because there's a ton of luxury. So let's go ahead and check that out. But first,
if you're new here, we're brothers and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We may be young, but we love cars.
And we'd love for you to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family. Let's learn a lot, have some fun with all the latest cars.
All right, now let's go ahead and head inside the vehicle. First, of course, I want to take a quick look at our key fob. We have the brand new Kia key fob. It does have a cool like sandstone finish on it for this EV9. All your buttons, of course, as you'd expect on all the sides there, and you do have digital key 2.0 as well. Now, as we approach the vehicle, you're going to notice that it will sense your approach, fold the mirrors out, as well as pop out the door handles for you to grab. And take a look at the inside of this vehicle. Now, we got a little bit of hands-on time with this previously in a studio, but out here in the daylight, I have to say the interior really pops and it's really functional. So I can't wait to talk to you guys about that. But first, let's go through some of the interior material and color choices. Now, one thing to remember about this EV9 is that this is a completely leather-free interior, and that really goes for every single trim level, no matter which one you choose. So they're all going to come with what Kia calls Syntex, so it's a faux leather basically. But if you choose the GT line, this is going to get you the nicest level of faux leather, and I have to say, very impressed by this. So even though this is fake, it feels so supple and soft, very much like a semi-aniline leather. I really like this. Obviously the seat itself, quilted design going on here. Two-tone finish with the black and the beige. You can also choose some really interesting color options. And one thing I really think is cool is that you have this mesh up here on the headrest. This is actually a very comfortable headrest. The overall seat itself is extremely comfortable, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the test drive. Now, if we take a look here at our controls, you'll see that we've got a lot of buttons here. That's because this top model is going to give you 16 ways of power adjustment. We even have ergo motion massage, and this is the relaxation seat. So you'll notice up here in the front, we have this kind of recliner basically. So when you go into the relaxation mode, like for instance, when you're charging or something like that, this is going to allow you to completely slide back, take killer naps, and be totally and utterly relaxed. But let's go ahead and climb inside because there's a lot of things I want to talk about. Step-in height is going to be very nice for an average sized person. And let's get into some of the overall materials. This cabin, guys, is luxury SUV level. It's a very, very nicely done cabin. You're going to have nice materials everywhere you touch. So you've got the leatherette material through here, as well as the center section and along the top. You've got a kind of mesh design, which I think looks quite nice. And by the way, I do want to point out, of course, the top model is going to give you 3-stage heated seats, 3-stage ventilated seats. You even have a 2-stage heated steering wheel. All those controls will be located right there. Moving to the upper dash, all this is a soft touch plastic. We have more of this mesh design, a faux aluminum that runs through the center section. You've got your single vent effect going on there. And then of course you've got your nice floating console, which is going to include a variety of materials. Everything feels very solid inside of this cabin. Now it's very interesting to start this model up. You'll notice there's not a push button start over here. This is actually going to be integrated into the shifter itself. So you just put your foot on the brake and press that right there. Now that it's fired up, let's kind of get into some of the individual features. Now, obviously, you've got this large display. It's actually made up of 3 individual displays, and I'm going to start off by talking about the gauge cluster, of course, as always. Reconfigurable digital gauge cluster. This is 12.3 inches. It does change with your drive modes. All the expected things that you want to see. Also, the top model, of course, does come with a head-up display, and this is a very nice head-up display with a lot of different kinds of information. Of course, everyone's favorite Hyundai Kia feature, you've got your blind spot camera system. This will be on the land and up. All trims actually will get standard rain sensing wipers though. As we pull back, we have a new steering wheel to the Kia brand. It's a little bit squared off on the top and bottom, feels really nice in the hand. You've got all your typical buttons. You also have your drive mode controller built right in. And if you choose an upper tier trim level, this is going to get you a power adjustment on the steering wheel itself. And by the way, I do want to point out that the ventilated seats that I mentioned earlier, those are standard, just like the heated seats on all trims. All right, let's turn over here to our storage. Of course, this is not the traditional arrangement, but you do still have a little bit of storage up here at the top in the console area. You also have a standard wireless phone charging pad. We slide back this cover. This is going to reveal a nice storage area, which is reconfigurable with your cup holders by just pressing that button. But obviously the main part of your storage is going to be over here. So as you can see, we have this nice bin here filled with some papers right now. It's a good simulation of how you could use this because some rivals just kind of leave this completely blank, but by shaping this into a bin, it contains the contents inside and they won't go sliding everywhere. And then we also, of course, have our USB ports up there. Now, I was mentioning this earlier. The shift knob obviously is not going to be there. It's going to be located up here. For this, you're just going to twist up for drive, down for reverse. When you go into reverse, this is going to be a 360-degree camera system on your top trim levels. To be specific, that's going to be the Land and the GT-Line. And as you can see, we can spin all around the vehicle with that cool 3D view that came out first on Genesis, but now has kind of proliferated through the Kia lineup as well. I love the way this looks. The graphics are top notch. And one of the things I also like is you have front and rear parking sensors no matter which trim level you choose. Just press the end of the stalk there to go into park as well. But now let's kind of zero in on this area. I love that they've made everything very minimalistic, but they did actually preserve some buttons up here at the top. These just don't show up when the vehicle is off. And then down below, we do have our climate controls. Now, as you'd expect, we do have a 3-zone automatic climate setup. Very simple, just adjust your temperature up and down right there. All the rest of your controls are actually going to be in this display. So in between these two 12.3-inch displays, we have this secondary display. It's probably about 5 inches if I had to guess. And as you can see, this is where we can kind of go in and control various different functions. I think this is a cool touch overall to have it separated and not inside the main display, but I will point out that when you're driving, as you can see, the steering wheel just kind of blocks out a lot of the information there. So I noticed that if I wanted to see, say, what have I just adjusted the temperature to for the driver, I do have to kind of bend around the steering wheel. That's a little bit of a usability issue. Maybe we need a secondary display or like a little number just over here so that the driver can see that a little bit better. But overall, I guess it's better that it's separated from the main display. Now, speaking of the main display, let's get into that. As I mentioned previously, this is a 12.3-inch display. This is not just exactly the same as a Telluride, though, because this is the next generation of Hyundai, Kia, Genesis software. So the important thing to note is that the performance on this much better than before, and I mean that in all ways. So touch responsiveness of the display itself is fantastic. You really don't have to poke it very hard at all. As you can see, graphics are crisp and fast responding. Obviously, we do have built-in navigation. That's what this is going to look like. But more important for most of you guys is the fact that this now comes with wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay. Thank goodness Kia has finally been able to integrate that in to all models for this EV9, and it'll hopefully soon proliferate across the entire Kia lineup. Now, I am sharing this vehicle with another journalist, so I can't be super detailed about everything, and that means I'm not going to sample out the audio system. But I do want to, tell you how many speakers it is. It's a 14-speaker Meridian sound system, and we do have the real metal speaker grills, so it looks quite nice as well. In terms of our mirror, of course, most models are going to come with an auto-dimming mirror. You get HomeLink universal remotes added when you go for the wind trim level. And if you choose this Land or the GT line, that's going to get you the digital camera. So if you just flip that switch, it's going to cut out all the rear obstructions. Even if you have boxes or too many kids piled up back there, you're still going to be able to see what's behind you. Now lastly, for the inside, you'll notice that just like the top-end SX Prestige Telluride, we've got the premium suede headliner. This looks very nice, like a lot of luxury vehicles. And then we also have a dual panel sunroof. So this front panel is basically a traditional sunroof. It does open up like a traditional sunroof. And then you've got the secondary back panel, and that has a power sunshade. But let's go ahead and get into the back here, because this is a 3-row EV crossover after all. So emphasis really is on the 3rd row and also on the 2nd row, because this has to be comfortable for the entire family. Now I've got some good things to report. And before I really climb inside, the first thing I want to talk about is just a little bit of rear spec space. So in terms of that, you're looking at 42.8 inches of legroom and 39.8 inches of headroom. That is more than a Telluride. That is also more than a Grand Highlander Hybrid Max. So very, very spacious for a 3-row midsize SUV. Now, right now you can see we have a captain's chair arrangement. You can also get a bench seat arrangement. It just depends on which trim level you choose. So light and wind trims will come with a bench, and then your light long range, Land, and GT line will come with these captain chairs. But let's go ahead and get inside, get into some of the specific amenities. So now that I'm actually sitting back here, I can really appreciate just how much space there is. This is what it looks like with me being 5'8", sitting behind my 5'8" driving position. Plenty of knee room. I can also wiggle my feet up and down, and the boxy shape is good for headroom as well. Now, in terms of features, we have a lot of things to cover. So I'll actually start out over here with the door trim. We have 3-stage heated seats. We have 3-stage ventilated seats. That's a really cool feature that Telluride was kind of the first mainstream crossover to add. We've got our rear sunshade as well. The seats are super cool looking from behind with that mesh headrest. And then looking over here into the center, we have our cup holders. You notice we have a little bit of ambient lighting, and this is an element I want to go ahead and talk about because we have this sliding center console. So we can actually pull that out, make ourselves a little bit of a tray table, or we can also, well, keep extending that as well, or you can push it forward. And this is going to give you, sorry, it's a little hard to do with one hand. There we go. This will show off our entire storage area. So you can stick a bunch of stuff back here. Whatever your kids need, you can hide it in there and then stow it away. I think that's really nice. You also have USB ports that are going to be built into both sides there for quick access. Now the seats though are really where I want to focus most of my attention though, because we do actually have the thing called VIP relaxation seat. This is optional on the Land and the GT line models, and basically this is an 8-way power adjusting seat with a full reclinability. So we have the recliner built in right there. We can lean this guy all the way back and go into the full executive style seat. It's really, really cool. But even when you're in the standard configuration, these are very comfortable seats. We've got the wing style headrest, so like on an airplane, these will kind of wrap around your head, hold you in place, which is a very nice touch. And overall, like I said, when we're riding in the back of this, it's really, really comfortable. Up top, you've noticed you got some vents. We also have our climate controls mounted here in the center for this 3rd zone. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the 3rd row. Now, in order to get to the 3rd row, since this is a fully power adjusting seat, like I was just mentioning, we're going to press this button right here on the top. You're going to have to give it just a little second here to power fold out of the way. By the way, the last time I was in a vehicle with a power 2nd row was a BMW X7 for about $110,000. But anyways, looking into this 3rd row. First thing I want to mention is the fact that this is a 2-seat arrangement for the 3rd row. So they went with basically more comfort for the 3rd row occupants rather than adding that 3rd seat. So depending on which one you choose, you're going to have 7 passengers or 6 passengers with this configuration. Now, let's climb on in here and I'll show you what it looks like. Once again, with someone who's 5'8". So this is with the seat slid all the way back. You'll notice my knees are going to be pressed completely against it. As I slide over here to this side, which obviously you can adjust how much second row legroom that you want. When you go into a more normal configuration, you're going to be a lot less cramped. And importantly, I want to kind of turn around here and take a look at our thigh support. This is really what kind of makes a third row comfortable for an adult, is having good thigh support. And I noticed that the seat actually does push against my thigh quite nicely, giving me a good amount of support and helping us to feel like a very comfortable rear seat. This is very much like the second row, actually. The headrest extends all the way up here and it's hitting me right at the top of my head. And overall, I feel quite comfortable as long as that person in the second row will slide up just a little bit to accommodate an adult. Now let's talk about some of the amenities back here. What you have is a couple cup holders. You have a USB port. We don't have the heated third row seats though, like you get on a Hyundai Palisade. And can't remember if I mentioned the actual spec, but this is about 32 inches of legroom. That is going to be greater on paper than a Telluride, but a little bit less than something like a Toyota Grand Highlander, because this is a shorter vehicle overall. Now, the other super critical element when you're picking a family three row, of course, is how much cargo capacity you have. So let's go ahead, get back here. Now, you do have a hands-free power opening tailgate, of course, on all trim levels. And once this opens up, you're going to find a very nice amount of space. So the dimensions are going to be 20.2 cubic feet when you're looking at this behind the third row seat. It's going to extend to 43.5 cubic feet when you fold the third row seat. And when you fold all of the seats, the second row and the third row, that's going to bring you up to a maximum of 81.9 cubic feet. That is going to be about 6 cubic feet less than a Kia Telluride and about 15 cubic feet less than a Grand Highlander. So that's kind of a key differentiator. It's going to be a little bit smaller. That's a very competitive number with an average midsize three row, but it's definitely going to be smaller than your biggest options in that segment of vehicle. So definitely keep that in mind if you have really big cargo needs. Now, some of the things that you can do, of course, is fold your seats, and I want to go ahead and show you what that's going to look like. Now, the third row is going to be manual folding, so it's going to require two hands, which is why I had to set down the camera, but you can fold the second row and you don't have to do that manually. You can actually do that right here from this button. So if I press that, even though this is a power folding or power second row, a lot of times these cannot fold completely flat, but that's not the case with this EV9. You can still fold those seats completely flat, and there's a view of all of that 81 cubic feet of space. As you can see, really nice. We have a lot of space. Now, I don't have any of my measuring utensils like the tape measure with me. We'll leave that to measuring expert Mason once we get this back in Kentucky for a full test, but I'll go ahead and close up the cargo area here. You do, by the way, have a power outlet located right there. All right, now before we head out on the test drive, I just want to go ahead and pop the hood, so to speak, here and talk a little bit about powertrain specifications. Now, before I do that, obviously, this is fully electric, so you're not going to find an engine. What you will find, though, is a frunk. It does vary in size, so it's going to be 3.2 cubic feet if you choose the rear-wheel drive version, or 1.8 cubic feet on this all-wheel drive version. So it's going to be a little on the small side, but you can certainly still fit like your charging equipment, things like that, or like we prefer to use, you could put some fast food in the frunk to keep the smell from going into the cabin. Now, let's get into some of the specs because it is a very technical vehicle. You're looking at two different size battery packs on board, 76.1 kilowatt hours or 99.8 kilowatt hours. That base battery pack is just going to be on the light rear-wheel drive trim level, and it's going to be good for 215 horsepower and a range of 230 miles. Now, everything else will come with the big battery pack, including the light long-range rear-wheel drive. That's going to give you the best range of the bunch, 304 miles, but the power is going to be the lowest, so 201 horsepower on that model and a 0-60 of 8.8 seconds. Now, what we have today and what every trim starting at the wind is going to have is a dual motor all-wheel drive system paired with that long-range 99.8 kilowatt hour battery pack. Power output on that is going to be 379 horsepower. You're going to have 443 pound-feet of torque, but on the GT line, it's boosted up to 516 pound-feet of torque. Range on this is going to be 280 miles for wind and land, or 270 miles with the larger wheels here on the GT line. And then lastly, we're talking about 0 to 60s. Those are going to be under 5 seconds for this top model. Now I came back here to the charge port so I could show that off to you guys. As you can see, it does have a power door. And I also want to talk about some charging specifications. So obviously, Hyundai Kia Group, they've been really great with the charging capabilities. This has a very fast charging as well. It has the 800 volt charging architecture, which means it's good for 10 to 80% in under 25 minutes. And that's going to be at a charge rate of about 210 kilowatts. So that obviously is going to be just a little bit slower than what you have on the EV6 in terms of the overall time, but the rate itself is going to be very fast. It's just that the battery pack is larger. Now this does also support vehicle to load as well. So just like with that EV6 model, you can power different things from the vehicle, but this also supports vehicle to home. So that's a really new thing that they've added, that you can actually power your house probably for about 2 to 3 days, depending on, of course, you have to actually have it set up to be able to support that. But they are adding the functionality for you to be able to do that and actually power your entire home with this EV9. Certainly very cool. But let's go ahead and get into the test drive because I can't wait to show you guys the performance. All right, guys, it's time to get behind the wheel of this EV9. You'll notice I have drive partner here. This is Matt. You know his channel. He has been on YouTube making awesome car reviews for a long time. So make sure you stop by his channel as well.
Thank you.
And we're drive partners today in Napa. We're going to head out on the road here with this EV9. Of course, we're going to cover all the usual assortment of information, and we're going to begin with a hard acceleration here in the GT line. All right, and that's up to a little above 60 miles per hour. So as you can tell from that acceleration, this is a pretty quick vehicle. I've already talked about, your various different performance levels depending on your battery pack and specifications, but with this GT line, this is going to be your highest performance option. You do have that extra torque on board, and altogether you're going to be looking at a sub 5 seconds 0 to 60. There's been some different measurements spat out during this presentation that we looked at earlier, but definitely less than 5 seconds. It feels very quick for a 3-row SUV, and that's going to be a big takeaway if you're looking at something kind of just a mainstream traditional gas-powered option like a V6 Telluride. You're going to notice a substantial performance advantage by having this electric EV9 model. Now, of course, like all electric vehicles, you're going to have that instantaneous torque. So you've got a really punchy feel even when you're up to speed and you just get on it. You're going to notice a lot of acceleration right from the start there. And I also do want to mention, as I kind of come off the gas, you've got various different levels of regen. You can control that here with these paddle shifters. So as I kind of dial it back there, you're going to have that kind of traditional coasting feel, or you can make it really strong if you prefer to do something like that. But we've caught up to some traffic, so I think this would be a great time just to kind of talk about the overall driving experience. Obviously, performance is really good with this model, but it's not really the focus of it. It's all about having that comfortable feel behind the wheel for you and your family, and this really delivers very great performance in terms of comfort. We actually got the opportunity yesterday to come from the airport to our hotel in the back seat, so we got that kind of chauffeured experience like your kids might experience or anybody that's riding with you, and it was a really nice ride. You're super comfortable in the back, super comfortable up here in the front. All the seats in this vehicle are superb, and I'm really impressed by the ride quality. We're not on a rough road, but we have gone over some rough surfaces, and it takes out all the harshness that a lot of vehicles are going to be transmitting, large bumps. This really does a good job of subduing it. I think that they've kind of struck the right balance here with the ride quality and in terms of our handling. So as we kind of go around a few corners, one of the advantages of the EV platform and having a large battery pack is, of course, that's going to be down low, and that's lowering your center of gravity. And compared to a traditional 3-row SUV, it does feel a little bit more buttoned down. Again, this is not, designed to be a hardcore performance vehicle or anything like that, but it does just give you a little bit more of an agile feel behind the wheel. So the drive mode controller is right here on the steering wheel. I'm going to go ahead and actually switch it into sport mode just to kind of talk about what changes. It's not going to be a ton of changes, too dramatic, but obviously the throttle response is going to be dialed up. I noticed that instantly. We also kind of boosted the steering feel, so it's going to be a little bit heavier. Yeah, things are definitely getting a little bit twistier here on this road, and like I was saying, it really handles the weight quite nicely. All right, we're going to do a little bit of another acceleration here. That was in the sport mode. But yeah, very nice and quick. I noticed there's not really any type of, simulated noises or anything like that. Totally not bothered by that at all. Now, hopefully we can find a nice straight area. We'll get that sound level reading at 55 miles an hour. But in the meantime, I do want to go over today's slam dunk and airball. So today the slam dunk, I think, has to be the experience of comfort. This is really a vehicle that I think is just designed to have, especially here on this trim level, a lot of luxury and a lot of comfort. And as I mentioned, that's something that you experience in the front seats, second row, and in the third row. So overall, everybody that you have in this vehicle is going to be impressed, I think, by the level of comfort and luxury that they're experiencing. Now, on the airball side of things, that is going to be the price tag. And that's something I'm going to talk about in just a second, but this is not going to come cheap, and it is certainly something that you're going to be spending extra money on versus a internal combustion option that you might look at for the family. So I'll go in more detail about that, but just know that, especially if you're choosing the top end model, it's going to be rather pricey.
So we're at 59.4 decibels.
All right. And of course, as always, I will, qualify and say we're in California. We're not on our standardized road like normally in Kentucky, of course, so I can't control that. But even on this rough road, we're getting a pretty good sound level reading, and that's because, Kia did a lot of work they were talking about with sound deadening to make sure this is nice and quiet. We have acoustic glass as well, they were mentioning, and overall, I think, especially when you're on a smooth road, it really is quite quiet. Like I was saying, we did kind of enter into a rough patch. We're in California, Napa Valley, so there's some smooth areas and some really rough areas. But overall, just based on being in hundreds of different SUVs, I think this is quite a quiet experience overall. And the last thing I want to mention before I wrap up this test drive is the warranty coverage. Just like with all your other Kia products, you're gonna have a very long warranty. 5 years, 60,000 miles for your basic coverage, 10-year, 100,000 mile for your powertrain and battery components. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about pricing. I went ahead and laid the sticker out here on the passenger seat so we can take a quick look at that. But I do want to first mention the starting price if you get the basic model. So that's going to be the light rear wheel drive. That's going to begin essentially where the Telluride stops, so $54,900. Now, as we work our way through the lineup, the prices will escalate a good deal. And once we get to the GT line, that of course already has standard the long-range battery as well as dual motor all-wheel drive. That's going to start off at $73,900. Now, there's a couple options you can get from there. We do have those options on board. So we've got the ocean blue paint, which is a little bit of an upcharge. Most importantly though, we have that relaxation seat. That's a $2,000 option, meaning after destination, we're gonna be looking at a total price of $78,430. Now, I do have to address this. Obviously, this is a pretty expensive price point. As I mentioned, when I was talking about the Airball, this is very expensive, definitely positions it as a luxury level product. So if you're looking at something like a Grand Highlander Hybrid Max, that's going to come in a lot less expensive than this model. This will actually line up pretty closely in terms of price. If you're looking at a TX plug-in hybrid variant, that one also is around $80,000. So a lot of things I've been saying today does also apply to the TX, which is sized the same as the Grand Highlander. So when you're looking at that, you could also consider something like a TX. Now, as far as federal tax credits, this doesn't qualify for anything right now, but Kia does say that they're going to begin building the EV9 in Georgia within calendar year 2024. So that does mean that it could possibly qualify for a tax credit in the future of perhaps half the tax credit or the full $7,500, but we don't really know right now at this time. This is going to be on sale in all 50 states, by the way, as well.